What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. We continue here with my 2024 college football schedule preview and projected record series. Up next are the Florida State Seminoles before we preview their schedule for 2024 and give them an early projected record based on how tough that schedule is. Let's take a look at what Florida State did in 2023. Here were my projections and predictions last year for the Florida State Seminoles. My projection for them was 9-3, and then my prediction for them in 2023 was also 9-3. But Florida State did a whole lot better than that compared to my projections and predictions last year. This team went 12-0 last season in the regular season. Again, we're basing this off of the regular season from last year in 2023. But if you want to count their ACC championship win and also count their bowl loss to Georgia in the Orange Bowl, this team finished with an overall record of 13-1 last season in 2023. But again, this team went undefeated last year in the regular season at 12-0. Here was the schedule last year for the Seminoles, and again, they won every single one of their games. You look at the non-conference schedule, they of course played LSU in that neutral site game back on September the 30th on that Sunday night before Labor Day on Orlando. They did pull away in the second half. I did mention this game in the LSU video. I did say that Florida State did pull away in the second half, and that was a really good way to kick off Florida State's season. And then you look at their road games in conference play. They did play Boston College. They ended up being a trap game there. Clemson on the road, Wake Forest on the road, Pittsburgh on the road, even Florida on the road in the non-conference. So they did have some tough road games, but the biggest win, in my opinion, for Florida State last year was definitely that Clemson game on the road back on September the 23rd. They won, of course, on the road in Death Valley. One of the toughest places to play in the ACC Conference. They won that game in overtime by 7 points. So, again, Florida State 12-0 last year in 2023. Let's now look ahead to 2024. Here's the schedule for Florida State in 2024 before we go game by game and preview each and every single individual game. On this schedule for Florida State, let's take a look at who the Seminoles will play in the non-conference. Remember, no divisions in the ACC once again this year. So this is their non-conference schedule. They will play Memphis on the road at Notre Dame, Charleston Southern, and they will play Florida here out of the non-conference, out of the SEC. Of course, they play Florida every year. That's a rivalry game that they play every year in rivalry weekend. So you look at this non-conference schedule, I think it's a pretty tough one for Florida State compared to last year. Memphis will definitely not be a cupcake game. Memphis is a pretty good group of 5 team. Notre Dame on the road, very tough place to play. That'll be a tough one there in the non-conference. And then Charleston Southern, pretty much the only cupcake game here on this schedule for Florida State in 2024. And then, like I mentioned, they play Florida every year in rivalry weekend, so that's a rivalry. You never know what can happen. So that's the non-conference schedule for Florida State, and again, it's a pretty tough one for 2024 compared to last year in 2023. Here is the schedule for 2024 again for Florida State. Let's go game by game now and preview this entire schedule for the Seminoles. So they will start things off with Georgia Tech here in Dublin, Ireland, a neutral site venue. This game will be on August 24th, and looks like it's going to be a Week 0 game. So this is the 3rd straight year that a college football game will be held in Ireland. The last 2 years, Nebraska versus Northwestern, then Navy versus Notre Dame last year. This time it's an ACC matchup. It's Georgia Tech versus Florida State. So they will open things up here with the Yellow Jackets on August 24th. Then after that, they do play Boston College here on September 2nd. And like I mentioned with Boston College kept Florida State pretty close last year before Florida State kind of pulled away in the 4th quarter late in the game. And then they play their non-conference game here against Memphis here on September the 14th. And then they play Cal here on September 21st, also known as California. This is not a non-conference game if you didn't really know that. California is now a newcomer in the ACC this year. So they will play California here at home on September 21st. And then after that, it's another newcomer here in the ACC this year. It's on the road at SMU here on September 28th. And this is the first road game here for Florida State on the schedule. So really not any big challenges in the month of September and also in that game of the month of August. I do expect Georgia Tech to compete against Florida State. Florida State might be the more talented team, though, compared to Georgia Tech. Tech. So now they get to the month of October. They'll play Clemson here at home on October 5th. Of course, a rematch from last year as well. They will play Clemson here at home this time. Clemson, like I said, did lose at home to Florida State last year. Could they return the favor and beat Florida State on the road here in Tallahassee? Florida State does get them at home. You got to feel like you're confident going into this game if you're a Florida State fan, because you get the Tigers at home here on October 5th. And then after that, they play Duke here on the road on a Thursday night on October the 18th. And then after that, it's another road game on the road at Miami here on October 26th. So they got back-to-back road games here with Duke and Miami. Two tough back-to-back road games if you're a Florida State fan. Duke going to be a little bit different this year with a first-year head coach, and Riley Leonard, of course, entered the transfer portal earlier in the year. And then, of course, Miami is a rivalry game. You never know what can happen. That game will be on October 26th. And then they get to the month of November. They'll play North Carolina here on November 2nd. And then they play on the road here at Notre Dame on November 9th, like I just mentioned earlier. This is a tough non-conference game for Florida State on the schedule when you're playing, of course, in the month of November against a Notre Dame team that is likely to pull off a upset here. Florida State could potentially be in the top 10 by this point. It's one of those upset alert type games as well. And then they play Charleston Southern here on November 23rd. And then after that, they close things out here in rivalry weekend on November 30th against the Florida Gators. And again, that's another rivalry. You never know what can happen. So that's the schedule for Florida State in 2024. My thoughts on this schedule: I don't think it's really that tough. You know, you do got some tough road games, back-to-back road games with Duke and Miami. The good news is about this schedule is that you get Clemson at home. You get, like I said, some of these other games at home. You get Florida at home. Miami, of course, on the road will be a very tough one there on the road, but you got Notre Dame on the road as well. So I do expect these two games to be one of their toughest road games as well. So let's now get to the projection here for Florida State. And again, this is not an official prediction. This is simply a projection based on how tough the schedule is. And this is the scale I've been using here for my projections so far. If it's a 1% game, these are games where Florida State has no chance of competing in. 20% games in the orange. About games where Florida State will be about a couple touchdowns of underdogs. The 40% games in the yellow will be games where Florida State will be a heavy underdog in by about a touchdown. 50-50 games will stay in the white. Games that can go either way. 60% games in the purple. Games where Florida State will be favored by at least a touchdown. 80% in the blue by about a couple touchdowns. And then the green games, the 99% games, are the easy wins here for Florida State. So that's the percentage that we're going to start here for Florida State in their projection. And again, let's start with the easy wins here for Florida State. And really, when I look at this schedule, there's only one easy win here on this schedule, and that's the Charleston Southern game here on November 23rd. This is only the easy win here, in my opinion, for Florida State. I do see them being favored here at least by over 95%. This is really the only game that I see Florida State winning by more than 3 touchdowns compared to the schedule and everything from last year as well. So Charleston Southern is the easy win here for Florida State. I think that's an easy win in my opinion. So let's now go to the next percentage here at 80% in the blue. The games where Florida State will be favored by at least a couple of touchdowns. And I think you've got 3 of them on here: Boston College, Memphis, and Cal. They're all home games here in the month of September. Boston College, I know, gave Florida State a very tough scare last year. If this game was on the road, I would definitely put it in the purple. Florida State, though, I think is the more talented team here, and I think you can favor Florida State by at least a couple touchdowns. Like I said earlier, that Memphis game here on September the 14th, this is not going to be an easy game here for Florida State. That's the reason why I'm putting it here in the blue. And then California, I don't know what to expect from Cal in their first year in the ACC. I know they had a pretty good, decent season last year. They made it to a bowl game. I do expect them to compete in their first year, but I just don't really know what to expect here from this team in 2024. With all the amount of production that Florida State is losing this year, I'm going to put this game at least in the blue for right now for Florida State, but at least they're going to really, be favored by at least a couple of touchdowns. So I think Florida State will, in all 3 of these games, they'll be favored by at least a couple of touchdowns here in the 80% category in the blue. So now let's go to the next percentage in the purple. The games where Florida State will be favored by at least a touchdown. And I think you've got 3 of them here on this schedule. I should say 4. 4 of them on this schedule. Georgia Tech here in Dublin, Ireland on August 24th. SMU on the road, Duke on the road, and then Florida here at home. Georgia Tech is a neutral site game. I know that should be a 50-50 game, but, let's be honest. Florida State is the more talented team than Georgia Tech. I know Georgia Tech had a pretty solid season, but still, Florida State is the more talented team here. That's the reason why I'm favoring the Seminoles here by at least a touchdown over the Yellow Jackets. SMU on the road. With it being on the road, I have to put this game in the purple. Plus SMU, I don't know what to expect from them in their first year of the conference as well. But SMU won the American Championship, so you have to at least put this game in the purple for right now. And then Duke here on the road, they're going to lose some players in the transfer portal, especially their quarterback Riley Leonard. They're going to have a first-year head coach as well. That's the reason why I'm favoring Florida State here by at least a touchdown. And also, Florida State beat Duke last year at home, so I do expect Florida State to be a touchdown of a favorite, even though it's on the road at Duke. And then Florida here, I know this is a rivalry game. You never know what can happen, but I think Florida State has owned Florida now in the last couple of years. I know the game was really close last year, but I think Florida State, based off of the game from last year, they were the more talented team, especially on the defensive side of the football in that game. So all four of these games, I think Florida State will be favored by at least a touchdown. And then the rest of the four games that you're seeing here in the white, these are games that can go either way in my opinion. And these are pretty much your 50-50 games here for Florida State. Clemson at home, Miami on the road, North Carolina at home, and then Notre Dame here on the road as well. So I think all four of these games are 50-50 games. I don't really see the Florida State Seminoles being any underdogs this year for right now. I know they lose a lot of production. They're going to lose Jordan Travis at quarterback. But based off of where this team was last year, you can kind of expect Florida State to still be the favorite going into 2024 for the ACC next year. So again, Clemson, Miami on the road, North Carolina at home, Notre Dame on the road. Pretty much these are your 50-50 games. I think they split these four games. I'd say they win like 2 out of the 4 games here. Maybe it's their home games that they win, and then they probably lose their road games to Miami and Notre Dame. But let's say they do the opposite. Let's say they lose to Clemson and North Carolina both at home. Miami on the road and Notre Dame, let's say they win both of those games. That would still give you like 2 losses on the year. So let's now get a projected record here for Florida State. And again, this is not an official prediction. This is simply a projection based on how tough the schedule is. So you count the green and blue games here as wins. Only 1 green game on this schedule and then 3 blue games there. You count those as wins, and then you split those purple games. You average those out at 60%, and then you average out the 50-50 games and split those 4 games as well in the 50-50 category. The overall projected record that you get for Florida State in 2024 comes out to be 10-2. So Florida State's projected record as of right now stands at 10-2. And like I said, with those 50-50 games, I think they do split those 4 games there. Clemson, Miami, North Carolina, Notre Dame, I think they win like 2 out of the 4 games, like I said. And that would give you just an overall projected record at 10-2. And I know Florida State's losing a lot of production, but I think this is still going to be a really good team. They're going to add some pieces in the transfer portal, and I think Mike Norvell has what it takes to really lead this Florida State team, maybe to a run for the 12-team college football playoff this year. So we'll see what happens. But again, the overall projected record for this Florida State team is 10-2 for 2024 for me. Let me guys know what you think about Florida State. What do you think their projected record is as of right now? Give me your best case scenario and worst case scenario on this Florida State team down in the comments below. Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned here for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports Channel.